Hello, gentlemen. Welcome to Formalism Friday. I'm Brandon.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Carson, and I'm well hydrated now.
Good. What were we talking about this week?
Where we left off last week
is your hydration.
Yeah.
We were all actually dehydrated and put into storage for a week, and then we've been rehydrated.
And cooked with Ron.
Man, that is fantastic. What is this, Brandon?
Oh, so this is from Matt Howarth's WRIB, which is a comic book about a group of guys that get together and create a pirate television station. And one of the main things about it is they have subliminals, but it's positive subliminals. So they'll be like, think for yourself, like go out on a walk, you know. And this is a thing where they show one of the cooking shows they have in it with Ron Post, who's like a famous criminal from Matt Howarth's other comic, Post Brothers. And this is the same page on both sides of it. So you're meant to actually take the page and hold it up to the light and see the subliminals through the back, which I'd never seen before, and was like, this is the best example I can think of something where it has to be on paper for it to work. And actually, I ripped it off for my multiple warheads, where I actually have a mountain with a castle inside of it, and you hold it up to the light and you can see the shape of the castle and a map of where the characters all are inside of the mountain.
Is that
I didn't notice that.
Something? Yeah, is it something that like is kind of hidden in multiple warheads, or is it like
I didn't see it?
Oh, okay. Yeah. By the way, at some point I bought the complete multiple warheads, and I thought
that's a lie.
And then I have realized since that there's a whole volume I don't have.
That's what happened.
I don't know how that got labeled complete multiple warheads. I think it's because it was a mini series, and the publisher was like, oh, this is all of it, because they had also put in some of the early adult work and everything.
Right.
But I don't think I even informed them like, oh, I'm still doing this, you know.
Yeah, because
maybe we should put out a ultimate complete that has, but then I'm going to do more in another 5 years. So
I don't remember seeing that in the book, but I know you told me, and I'm like, man, I thought I have all of Brandon's stuff. Like, I've always liked your stuff and followed it, but I don't remember seeing that. So
that's wild. So we both have the defective complete multiple warheads, minus the see-through mountain.
Oh, I've got boxes in here. I should just send you guys some volume 2. It's printed a different size, which irritates everyone.
Yeah, your sketchbook book like is bigger, and then all the other ones on the shelf or all that.
Yeah, because for a while I had this idea when I was doing the Island magazine that you could print things slightly better or slightly larger than everything else on the shelf, and it was just a little bit more expensive, but it stood out. And then by the time I did Rain Like Hammers, the publisher was like, "This will cost you an extra $1,000 off of your royalties," and I was at a place where I was like, "Never mind, we are going." Printed on the Archie paper.
Right. I'd like standard, please.
Yeah.
So can we go back? I'd like to see what it actually looks like when you're seeing them.
Yeah, I'm glad there's a. Did you do this digitally to kind of suggest?
Just lower the opacity.
Yeah, but that's the general effect. That's interesting.
Although I think this is the backwards version of it, because I think you'd actually be looking through the other side. I don't know why I thought that was.
Oh, right.
Well, this would be flipped over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you would have to hold it up, or this is on the backwards side of this.
Yeah, it's on the back side.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There's a Warren Ellis comic, I don't remember who the artist on it was, that came out maybe a decade ago, and it came with a flashlight with it where you could shine it and see like black light, like secret word balloons.
Huh. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think it was some Kickstarter thing or something where you actually had to pay for this light. It was like a $10 30-page comic.
That's a really interesting idea. I'm thinking real quick of that Spiegelman designed. I don't know if he actually executed it or just was the designer of the. Is it the right after 9/11?
Oh, right, the Shadow of No Towers.
Right. Is it? Did he use that on the trick, or that trick on the cover of Shadow of No Towers as well, where you got a rich black background with a single plate black to show other elements if you hold it up in a certain kind of light?
Yeah, I think that sounds right. It's been a while since I've seen that one, and that's the danger of doing a 9/11 comic, is it doesn't have a lot of like, that was a fun book, let's check that out again.
I'd really like to find out some more about this.
I got this on that Detroit trip. There was a copy of this. It's just like a gloss black on a matte black. Is there something else in here?
Oh no, I just that was I believe that was a design for a New Yorker cover, like the first post 9/11 New Yorker cover. And it's just it's just like I think that's a similar kind of thing in that you're using the print medium to evoke some kind of hidden,
if you guys say something interesting for a minute, I'll go grab Jim Rugg's Aphrodisiac, because it has my favorite use of spot black or spot gloss on it in terms of a hidden message and the physicality of the book.
That's cool. Okay, yeah.
I'll pop this up and you guys can.
I can tell you what wouldn't be interesting is reading In the Shadow of No Towers.
I want to see Jim Rugg's Aphrodisiac, his response to 9/11 comic. That would be appropriate.
What do you mean it wouldn't be interesting to read this just because it's not that great of a book?
Oh, no, I'm not even on the quality. Just there's a huge, for some reason I was talking about this the other day. There's a huge insurgence of there's a bunch of comics around 9/11 that all came out that felt like people were processing their feelings and it was really important. But I'm just can't. It's one of those weird things where I'm like, who's gonna go back and read like a 9/11 book just for like, who's like, that was a time, 9/11. Like, it's such a bummer.
I almost did a episode on this because I did just grab it recently. I've never read it before, but I saw it. And that was basically, I didn't have much to say about it besides like, it feels really hollow now. And it felt like he knew that at the time because it's only like 12 pages,
right?
But it's this thick because he published it on like I get it. You're trying to make the weightiness of the thing, but you're just trying to say this is important. It's big and huge and heavy, but it's like pages? This is a page is like, I don't know, like an 8-pin ply piece of mat board.
Right.
It's a board book. It drives me nuts. My kids, have fortunately finally grown out of them, but up until recently, I had to put up with the occasional board book still, and worse yet, like board book editions of books that have been printed in other methods. It just feels like it does. There's something like there's a certain kind of arrogance about saying that your book needs to be about 10 to 15 times heavier and thicker than it would have been had it been printed on another paper stock. I'm not sure exactly what.
With the children's books, it's like you're gonna be eating those and you're gonna be reading this with a peanut butter sandwich in your hands. So that it makes it funnier with the 9/11 book, where it's just like you're probably gonna get peanut butter all over this. So
with kids' books, you're doing a board book because it's a kid handling it, and you're trying to like preserve the integrity of the book. This one just felt pretentious, and I didn't feel like. I know we're shitting all over one of the revered.
Well, he's a fantastic cartoonist. He doesn't need us to defend him. I will say though that I bought that for $2 at Half Price Books in Seattle, and I did eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich right off the front of it.
Well, I paid too much for it. It was still like, I don't know, $10 or something. Okay, I got Aphrodisiac, and I don't know if this is going to show up on the cover, but you see the spot gloss.
Yeah.
But it's totally it's not normally you're emphasizing something in the image. This is like a totally hidden image
it's like a truck flap.
Yeah, this is the best fucking use of spot gloss, and
it's really cool.
I think when you're talking about like a flashlight or something that justifies having the book as a physical object, this is another trick I would be interested in seeing, like the interior of a book printed with spot gloss. It could kind of be like this,
a ghost or something in the book that showed up just as spot gloss, and the characters didn't see it, but you could just see it if you move.
Are you sure we're going to publish this discussion here? Because it sounds like all three of us might. I'm taking notes over here, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do with it what you will, but it could be a way to put subliminals in, like this kind of thing too.
Do you guys think that people of a certain age, as in people of the age range that we happen to be, got some of these techniques from Choose Your Own Adventure books?
Interesting. I mean, there's an excitement about what could be in Choose Your Own Adventures books that I don't know if they ever quite lived up to.
Well, and that's why I liked Meanwhile, because it took that Choose Your Own Adventure into comics, which just made it so much harder to process, like how someone would construct that. The guy's a genius.
Yeah, that stresses me out even thinking about putting that together.
But I talked to Edward Packard about 10 or 12 years ago. The guy who invented the Choose Your Own Adventure book. Interviewed him for about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, and really fascinating guy. And his business partner on that venture had been working with quote unquote computer simulations, had been doing work for the military. At the time, a computer simulation in 1975 or whatever was basically like a Zork adventure. Right. But it was like cutting edge, and I have often thought that even down to web interfaces, it seems to me that the early web interface really owes a huge debt to HyperCard interactions, which HyperCard interactions directly came from the sort of Choose Your Own Adventure, like basically like the whole Choose Your Own Adventure concept. You could kind of distill it down to how do we do a flow chart on paper that I don't know. I think that there's some kind of commonality to it. And so when I wonder if some of the things that like these sort of more extreme formal tricks that we're talking about right here, I mean, that's where it starts tickling my fancy. I start remembering making Choose Your Own Adventures as a kid, or the first time that I folded a book up with a friend and then realized I could make a flap and have something hiding inside the flap.
Oh, certainly.
Or, sewing a stuffed animal back together that a friend who was a girl, had been wounded, and then putting a note inside of it before I stuffed it, sewing it back up.
Covert.
Like things like that have this kind of visceral appeal that sort of strikes my boyhood fancy for the flip book.
I don't know if that's where I would have got it from or not. It's hard to reverse engineer. I do know that comics in general was something I always had a predilection for, and I guess I didn't know it at the time, but as an adult, I've looked back and I thought, man, when I was a kid and my mom took me to the library, I always grabbed the kids' book where the balloons were connected to their head and they weren't doing that Prince Valiant thing where it's picture here and then Bunny says. I always would look for the ones where they're connected. And so I would go and also raid the Garfield and the Tintin and all of that stuff that they had with the kids' books.
You poor summer child.
Yeah, I never thought about, like, I for a long time I would say I got into comics because of Ninja Turtles, like in 7th or 8th grade, because I didn't have the TV and I had to go buy the Archie reprints. But looking back to being a child, I was always grabbing the ones with the word balloons because that just logically made sense to me. And so I think that has always been there from childhood. I don't remember having any realization of like the formal trickery of stuff, though.
Did you read Choose Your Own Adventures, Brandon, or game books of any kind?
Oh yeah. No, I remember Choose Your Own Adventures required a fair amount of I guess that's the appeal of them, is they require a lot of investment because you're not just reading a story all the way through, but it would be like a false start. And I remember reading them and it's like you die 6 times before you see what happens next if you're invested in a story. For some reason, the Choose Your Own Adventure thing was reminding me of, do you remember in the 80s when they killed off Robin and they had a phone number that you could call in and vote if he died or not?
Yeah.
And they drew 2 versions of the page of like, he's alive or he's dead. It just made me think of a Choose Your Own Adventure style comic where, what if they did an issue where he's alive and an issue where he's dead and you could choose to buy either? I think that would be really interesting.
Schrodinger's Robin.
Yeah, exactly. Like, or you just have you put out anything where it's 3 comics and it's just like 2 completely different versions of where the story could go.
Well, and Jonathan Luna just did that, right? You were voting on that, Brandon.
Oh yeah, Jonathan Luna did a like Yeah, but he only did the version that got the most votes.
Yeah, on the Instagram.
Yeah.
Why don't you just go ahead and sell and solicit both, like you're saying, and then you make it true meritocracy. Whichever one sells the most copies is the true one. And
yeah, it'd be difficult too, because I imagine, because if you're shipping it through comic stores, something I always think about, which is really weird about comic stores, you're convincing retailers to put something out on the shelf so then people can decide to buy it or not. But it has to, if the retailer is not interested in it being on the shelf, then it doesn't matter. So it's almost like you'd have to convince retailers to order as many copies and then keep track of what was returnable.
But people would buy both just for a collector. Like Michael Turner did that with Fathom. I don't know if you guys ever read that, but his follow-up book to Witchblade.
Oh yeah.
The issue I remember, because I was, I was more of like this is why I say too, like I don't know that I was particularly interested in formalism in comics until I was more like 19 or so. Like I was a real hardcore like image guy. I wanted to draw and work at Top Cow or Wildstorm, and that was kind of my thing. But I remember being really hyped for Fathom #1 to come out, and like one of the things that had me hyped was there was 1A, 1B, and 1C, and there were a number of pages in it that were different. They were the same part of the story, but told from a different character's perspective. But it was basically cool. Like taking the idea of alternate cover and, like, oh, I got to have cover by this guy, and this guy, and moving that into the story. And it had no real significant contribution to the story, but you would. So it was purely a money grab more than a formally interesting thing.
I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm going to do this thing. I'm not going to tell you what it's when or why, and it won't be solicited as a different one. We'll just randomly distribute them.
Okay.
Different versions of the
Fathom
story.
thing makes me wonder what it would be like if you did a story like that and it was like, because especially that it's like a cheesecake book, you'd be like, here's the edition that's almost like the male gazy character, how he sees the world, and then you have how Fathom sees the world, and like a guy who's like sees himself as like this heroic He-Man character, and then you see how the girl sees him and she's like, he's all right, he's just drawn like a regular guy.
That's like kind of what it was, but there was no depth to it. It was just like, this is how this character sees that scene, and this is how this character, like, one is like her looking down in the water, and the other one's like maybe the guy that's under the water seeing the scene from above, but there's no like actual like psychological content on it.
Right, it's pretty straightforward. The interesting thing, do you know about the Fathom connection with Bill Willingham?
No.
So Elementals was his superhero, kind of non-Marvel DC. I think it was like Comico. Bill Willingham put out Elementals, and it had a green water character in it that was named Fathom. That when Turner created the character Fathom, he actually bought the rights to that one just so he could keep the name, even though it has no actual connection.
Wow, I did not know that.
It's super inside baseball and boring, but I thought it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you have to buy the rights just to kind of make sure that's not a problem. Yeah, that's smart. He had the money to do it, I'm sure.
Do you know if this book is in print, Brandon, that this sample comes from?
Rab.
Oh, WRAB. You can order it actually from Matt Howarth himself off of his website.
Fantastic. We'll put the link in the notes here.
Yeah, and he'll sign it with a ballpoint pen and send it to you. So I have a signed one here.
It looks so old. That's cool that it's still in print. Okay, well, we're getting those. Maybe we'll do an episode where we take a look at this whole book more closely.
That'd be fantastic.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite Howarth books too.
Okay,
awesome.
Cool. All right.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah, we'll reconvene next week.